Are you tired of self-doubt holding you back? Have you ever wished you could have the confidence to face your fears, go after your wildest dreams, and the tools necessary to live your best life? Hey there, amazing listeners. I'm your host and author of How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power. And I've made it my mission to help you break free from self-doubt and embrace confidence. Subscribe now and join us as we unlock the secrets to unshakable self-assurance. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, I want you to imagine this scenario for just a moment. You're in a room full of really smart executive people. You're on top. You are the leader. And then it hits you. I don't know if I belong here. Can I lead these people? Do I truly know enough to be the leader of this crowd, right? I think a lot of us have felt this way. The imposter syndrome starts to sink in. We start to lose our empowerment and wonder what we're doing there. Now, tell me this doesn't sound familiar. I think we've all had that exact scenario come over our minds, and it's pretty common. So today, I want to introduce my guest, Patrick Mork. Now, Patrick is a seasoned CEO coach, speaker, and 3-time Silicon Valley Chief Marketing Officer. He's built teams and launched major brands at Google, PepsiCo, and several VC-backed startups. His book, Step Back and Leap, which I have right here, is a bestseller on Amazon and combines personal stories with actionable exercises. Patrick's clients have included Walmart, NEC, and prominent founders across Latin America and the U.S. He's recently relocated to Miami from Chile to promote his book, and the list goes on and on. Patrick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Tara, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked about that visualization of being in a room, being the leader, and maybe not feeling quite like you belong there. And, it's interesting that you posted that just a few days ago, right before our podcast interview today. And I saw it and I said, I have to ask Patrick about this. Take us back a little bit to when you were in corporate and when this was the case, when you were having these feelings.
Yeah, so this happened, I think, back in 2011, so quite some time ago. I was working at Google, and I was leading marketing for the team that created and launched, Google Play, which is Google's App Store. And we just had the launch. Things have gone pretty well. We got a ton of press. The developer community, the press, our partners, and just consumers. A lot of people in the tech community were very excited about Google Play. We're very excited about Google stepping up to really challenge Apple, which at that time was by far and away the dominant app store. And I think we had won like 2 marketing platinum awards, which is like the highest accolade you can win at Google for marketing back to back. And so things were going really, really well. And I remember, I was doing a brainstorm or something with my team, and I was walking around the room. I was walking around the room, and I was looking at the people and taking questions from people. And we were talking about strategy, and I was looking outside kind of like, at the trees and stuff in the Mountain View campus. And all of a sudden I started getting these nagging questions, like, oh my God, these people are so smart. Oh my God, these people on my team are so talented. And then I started asking myself this question, it's like, am I really good enough to lead them? How did I actually get here? They should never have hired me. Am I all I'm cracked up to be? Am I a fraud kind of thing? And it was horrifying because I had never had a moment of self-doubt like that. much less kind of in the middle of a team meeting, right, which was really odd. And and I went away and I studied that, but it wasn't really until years afterwards when, I had worked with an executive coach and then I became an executive coach that I really began to understand that this is quite common. It's called imposter syndrome. And it is, kind of like it's a series of thought patterns and behavioral patterns where we start to doubt our own ability. We call into question what we've achieved, what we've done, how people see us, the accolades that we've gotten, and our own ability to do things. And the worst part is that, it gets worse and worse, right? You see, I think one of the Williams sisters, I don't know if it was Serena or Venus, had this. I think, actor Tom Hanks has had this. Leonardo DiCaprio has come out and talked about it publicly, and even, figures in Silicon Valley, have talked about it. Very well-known figures, both men and women have talked about this. And the more successful you get, the worse it gets. Right. So, it was shocking to me. And of course, the nice thing is there are ways to combat this, there are ways to deal with it. But at the time I was horrified. I was like, oh my God, this is not me. What's happening? What do I do about this?
Wow. So much truth there. And it is true. The higher you climb in success, and we've seen this a lot, especially at the executive level. I think it was last year I interviewed a CMO very similar to yourself. And I remember him saying to me during a session, he said, I'm just waiting for them to find out.
Yeah.
I said, what, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. I don't follow. Who are we talking about and what are they finding out? Like, it just kind of came out of the thin air. And he said, I'm waiting for the leadership team to find out that I don't know what I'm doing. Now, this person, again, fellow CMO, had 20 years experience in that position. And previously, this person told me that his leadership team was really smart. The CEO is really smart. So all I did was say, I thought you said these were very smart people, yes? Well, yeah. And I said, so they've been making a mistake for 20 years.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
And all of a sudden, he realized that wasn't truth. So the things we tell ourselves, we can really believe they're truthful when they're not.
Yeah, I work a lot with startup founders, and I've been mentoring startup founders since 2008. And, I think one of the things that you learn is that we are often our own worst enemies. We're our biggest critics. Yeah. And a lot of the way that we look at the world and the way that we respond to things is based off of, how do we treat ourselves, right? So if we treat ourselves harshly, that is negative, right? That's worse for our self-confidence, right? You have people, and you see that a lot with kids. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I really suck at this stuff. I'll never be good at this kind of stuff, right? And you see kids say this all the time. What people don't realize is oftentimes this is conditioned also by parents, right? So parents have to be very careful about the language they use around their kids, because if you say, Johnny, you're always a bad boy, right? Like Johnny will internalize that over the years and the years and the years, and that will become his default. So the way that we talk to ourselves is really important. And most people are not even self-aware of that. But if you read more and more literature, Joe Dispenza, a number of people have written about this. There's a lot of neuroscience behind this now. The way we talk to ourselves and talk about ourselves really does begin to shape our reality. If we're always talking about, I'm terrible in finance, I'm not good with numbers, I'll never understand this stuff, and we repeat that over and over, that begins to be our reality. You literally are a product of the energy that you generate. If you're generating negative energy, you're going to attract negative energy. If you're always talking down about yourselves in a certain context, I'm never going to be fit, I'm never going to be smart, I'm never going to be successful, I'm never going to be able to start my own business, that becomes your reality, right? And so what I've seen with very successful people is that they are also very much able to be more compassionate, to talk about themselves in a constructive way, and to, especially very important, to look at failure not as failure per se, but more as a necessary part of learning and growing, right? It's like Kobe Bryant once said this in an interview. They asked him, what are you more, what is the thing that drives you? Is it more the desire to win, or is it the fear of losing? And it was a great question. And his answer was neither. Is like, what drives me is the learning. It's the process, right? It's like, what am I getting out of this experience? If I'm winning, great, that's awesome. But the challenge is that when we win, we don't really learn because we don't look back and look at what we did and analyze. We just kind of like, we celebrate, right? Hopefully we celebrate, rah, rah, we're awesome, whatever, post on social media, and then we move on with our lives, right? But when we lose, that's when we sit down and we go, oh my God, why did this happen? And like, what could I have done differently? And why did this blog post, not generate any interest? Or why did my book flop? Or, why did this marketing campaign not work out? Right. And then we dig in. And it's when we have this ability to look at that setback as a source of learning that not only do we get a lot more out of that experience, but we're able to bounce back more easily. And we're also able to be much more compassionate with ourselves.
So true. Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language, right? And as I was refreshing myself on your wisdom in your book today, one of the quotes that you used I thought was really poignant. It's from Albert Einstein. Failure is success in action. Ooh, right? Kind of changes the perspective. So you could say to yourself, hey, I'm failing. I'm a failure. Or you could say, I'm learning how to succeed.
Exactly. It's a great point.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, in the beginning, we talked about that hard moment. You're in corporate, you're in Silicon Valley, you're doing all these really big things, but the imposter syndrome's kind of kicking in. What was there a moment of change? Something happened that made you want to take a leap and bet on yourself?
I think the biggest moment came in 2017. And I talk about this a lot, in the second chapter of my book. I was working for a really, really well-respected and successful startup, at least by the general metrics, right? And I had a falling out with the founder, and ultimately they decided to let me go. And it was really, really tough because I really liked the company. I liked the culture. I liked what they were doing. And I really felt that they were doing something that was meaningful for society, that was impactful for helping others. In this case, students in college and high school. And I was so shattered by the fact that I'd been let go, and I'd had a series of stumbles, after leaving Google, like trying to find my footing and trying to find myself. And I think kind of the realization that I needed to make a change is that sometimes you get to a point in your career, and I don't know if some of the people in your audience have had this, but when you've been doing something long enough that to some extent it's almost second nature, or you feel like you've learned not everything, because you never learn everything, but you feel that you've learned a lot of what there is to learn in that discipline, and that you get to a place where you're quite good at it. Sometimes you reach this plateau where you're like, well, I'm no longer excited about this. I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. I know I can do this. I know I can continue to do it over and over again. And the problem with the job market and society more broadly is that that's what recruiters and headhunters look for, right? They look for people who have done the job, who know how to do this. This person's an experienced CMO. They've done this 5 times. They know what they're doing. They're the gold star when it comes to whatever their profession is. But you're no longer excited about doing the work because you're no longer growing, right? You're no longer challenged. You're no longer excited. You're no longer like, oh, I can't wait to do this. It just feels like Groundhog Day. It just feels like, copy paste. I'm going to do this all over again. It's a different company selling a different widget with different investors, whatever. And so for me, I think kind of like, that when I got laid off at this company, the the come to Jesus moment, if you will, to use a kind of a religious terminology, was that I was cycling on my bike, a couple of days after being laid off really early in the morning in the hills of Redwood City in California. And I had my headphones on, and I was kind of like, really emotional and tearing up and really thinking about, where do I go next? I'm so confused. I can't seem to figure out the CMO thing anymore. I'm not excited about it. And I didn't see this garbage truck that was pulling out of a driveway. Right. And until the very last minute, and then the driver saw me and just kind of like slammed on the brakes, slammed on his horn. And I must have missed the truck by like inches. I was able to swerve and not hit the truck. And when I pulled over to the side of the road, I had this nagging question in my mind, or this nagging thought, which was, well, what would have happened if I hadn't swerved? Like, what would have happened if I had just, ran into that truck at whatever, 20, 30 miles an hour, full speed? I wouldn't have to deal with any of these problems anymore. I'd probably be dead. Right.
Wow.
And that was on the back of, a layoff, a lot of things going wrong in my life, a lot of personal things going wrong. My wife had left like a year or something before, so a lot of things were not going correctly. That was that moment. That was the moment where I picked up my phone and I decided to hire an executive coach who I knew, because I realized that as successful and as smart as I thought I was, I didn't know how to get myself out of that situation. Like I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't capable enough to navigate what comes next, right? And when you get to a point in your career, as I think many of us do, and I think with AI and everything that's happening in society, a lot more of us are going to have this. Like, I mean, I don't want to be the bringer of bad news or doom and gloom, but the reality is careers are going to be shorter.
Yeah.
Like this thing of like doing the same career for 10, 15, 20 years, that's not going to work anymore, because the technology and changes in society and changes in companies is going to progress so fast that we're going to be going through career after career after career. And that's going to mean we're going to have to reinvent ourselves. We're going to have to find new ways of doing things. But there's no manual for doing that, right? That was the whole reason why I wrote Step Back and Leap. I wrote Step Back and Leap because I was like, okay, maybe through a combination of all my crazy ass stories and a bunch of exercises, maybe I could help some people like figure this stuff out, right? And not have to go through all the pain and the misery that I went through. But that was the moment. The moment was like, I had this suicidal thought that I'd never had before. Wow. And I was like, I don't know how to figure this out on my own. I'm going to have to hire somebody to help me. People have been telling me I should have done this years ago. Right. And sadly, most of us do not make this leap, right, until we have a crisis. Right. And so what I would tell viewers, I would say, like, man, don't wait until you have a crisis. Like, don't wait until your wife leaves, you get fired, your family falls apart, you get sick. Right. I was fortunate enough, like, I'm super, super healthy. And I do a lot of fitness. I watch what I eat. I have a trainer. I do all this crazy stuff, But most people don't react and make a change until something really, really bad happens, which is really unfortunate, because by then you're in a lot of pain, right? And potentially you put a lot of other people in a lot of pain, right? It shouldn't have to be that way.
It shouldn't have to be that way. And this is a preventative measure, right? So that it helps you before you get to that point. I think that's a pretty powerful concept, that, it's not seeing the doctor when you're in pain. It's seeing the doctor before you get in pain, right? It's
Absolutely.
Kind of concept.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, the way I think about therapy and coaching, right? They're two very different things, right? Therapy generally is kind of like past to present, right? It's like what happened in your past that has produced a trauma that impedes you from moving on in your present state. Coaching is more like present to future. It's like, where are you today, where you want to get to, and what's holding you back from doing that, right? But I think the thing that they both have in common, which I always talk to when people that I talk to are contemplating seeing a therapist or being coached by me or somebody else, it's think about it as car insurance. You don't buy car insurance after you've had a massive wreck, right? You get car insurance before you have an accident. And most people never figure this out, right? The only people who have figured this out are professional athletes, celebrities, and people whose job and industry requires them to have a coach, because that's just part of becoming the best at what you do, right? So if you look at, Steph Curry or Simone Biles or whoever, they all have coaches, right? If you look at Celine Dion or some of the most famous people on the planet in terms of the art industry or musicians, they all have coaches. Why? Because those coaches are seeing things that they're not doing properly, and then making adjustments and asking questions and pushing them to a new level. But in the business world, we don't have that. What I mean is, it's not that it doesn't exist, it's that it's not common practice. It's like every CEO in North America should have a coach. I mean, it's the most, now that I've had coaching for like the last 7 or 8 years, and then I coach people, it's like obvious as day that you should have a coach if you can afford one, right? If your company will allow you to do that. But you talk to most CEOs and most startup founders, and they don't. And it's like mind blowing to me, because you come up across so many situations where it's really beneficial to have somebody who can give you a different perspective. And when I went through that, that oh my God moment, I realized that that's what I had been missing. Part of what I had been missing was like, I just had no clarity on how do I make this really hard decision. I know I need to make a career change, but I don't know how. And I can't figure it out on my own. And I'd been to like seminars, and I'd read all the books, and I'd listened to Tony Robbins and, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, that's very different from actually having somebody by your side who's like asking you questions, has a framework, challenges you, and all of a sudden opens up your world to, well, there's all these different perspectives, right? But most of us never go there.
So powerful. Yes, most of us don't go there. And I think there's a fear there. Yeah. The mindset, the fear mindset kicks in, and it's the lower level thinking. And the first thing we think of is, this is going to be a waste of money. I'm not going to get a return on investment. I'm going to fail. So what we end up doing, similar to what we talked about in the beginning, is create a self-fulfilling prophecy where that actually does become true. And then those beliefs over time dictate our habits, our actions, and of course that dictates our outcomes. And a lot of this is subconscious. I don't think there's a lot of people who know this consciously and still do these. Maybe there is, but I think for the most degree of it, it's subconscious behaviors, probably things that we learned from childhood, like you said as well in the beginning of the show, that translate to, these belief systems that we have as adults, and ultimately dictate these actions and outcomes that we have that are preventative of growth and success.
Absolutely.
Am I right?
Absolutely. I think Joe Dispenza does an amazing job of talking about this in several of his books, Becoming Superhuman, and many of his podcasts. He's shaped a lot of how I think about this. And now I have a 17-year-old who lives with me here in Miami, and, I coach him, and we talk a lot about mindset. He's a amateur athlete, wants to play Division I basketball. And it so much is about your mindset, and the subconscious piece that you talked about is key. It's vital. I never used to believe in any of this stuff. I never really asked myself that question until I got much older, and then I started reading about spirituality. There's a great book called I think The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks a lot about being present, being in the now. But the subconscious piece is amazing. It's and for me, there's several components. I think one component, which your viewers can take off this episode and really start implementing today is just gratitude.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this. You talk a lot about it in your book, right? Being grateful, man. It's like being grateful every single day for what you have is so basic. And I started doing this probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it's like every day I start my day by writing. I literally write here 5 things I'm grateful for yesterday, right? And if I can't think of something that's like really, really cool, grateful, like, winning a new client or winning an award or publishing a book or whatever, then it's something much more basic. Like, I went for a really nice bike ride, or like, I had a really nice time playing computer games with my son, or like, I'm super grateful that, my mom and dad who are in their 80s are still alive and are with me. And I get to, talk to them, every week. I think we live in a world where people are so focused, and social media has a lot of blame to carry because of this. We live in a world that's so focused on what we don't have, right? I mean, like, I live in Miami, right? And it's like you see a display of wealth, which is unlike very few places on earth in Miami, right? Particularly where I live. And it's kind of like I ride my bike, every couple of days, and I see, Lamborghinis in the driveway and Bentleys and stuff. And there are people whose lives are miserable because they keep thinking that they don't have these things.
Yes.
I don't have this house. I don't have this job. I don't have this bonus. I don't have this shirt. I don't have this role. I don't have this savings account. I don't have this car. And that is so negative and destructive, right? And it's in your subconscious. You're thinking about this all the time. And so you constantly live in this land of need, and this land of want, and in this land of scarcity. And guess what? Scarcity just creates more scarcity. Like, that's the reality, right? Whereas if you live in this other land, which starts with being grateful for what I have, man, I have this every day. That's like, people are always like, how is it possible that you're such a positive person, that you're so high energy, that energy is contagious? And I'm like, well, because I'm always focused on what I have. Like, I'm focused on being grateful for the things that are good in my life, right? It's like I have an amazing relationship with my son. I have amazing health. I do, work that is powerful and rewarding. I have amazing clients, So, when you start off your day with just that gratitude practice, man, that I guarantee you, try that for 20 days, just like 5 minutes every single day, 5 things you're grateful for and why you're grateful for them. And you will see that your outlook on life will start to change. It's amazing, but it's true.
Such great wisdom. And I get asked that question all the time. What does gratitude have to do with confidence? So obviously it's in the first 3 chapters of my first book.
Yep.
I did a whole TED Talk about it, but people
Yep.
still don't get the correlation. And you do, because gratitude is the opposite of scarcity.
Absolutely.
So when you have a grateful mind, it's the law of increase, folks. It
Absolutely.
shows you what you are grateful for. And then if you take my method and apply it to the past, present, future self, you can be really expansive and say, okay, here's a couple things from my past I'm grateful for. Here's a couple things in my present I'm grateful for. And you know what? I'm actually looking forward to the future. Here's a couple things in the future that I'm already excited about and grateful for. All of the sudden, you go from a scarcity mindset with one of limitation and comparison to one of expansion and gratitude for who you are, not what you don't have or what somebody else has. And it really does shift your perspective a lot. So powerful, Patrick. And it's not easy with social media. You're right. We can compare ourselves all day, can't we?
Yep. We can. I mean, look, it's I have a rule I have a golden rule for social media, which is I'm generally not on social media unless I'm contributing content that's helping others.
Yeah.
Or I might be, endorsing or supporting content that is, that's created by people that I respect. And therefore I feel that I have to contribute in order to share and make sure it reaches more people. But otherwise, I keep it to a minimum. I really do.
Well, and you have to know those healthy boundaries. You know what? I'm the
You do.
same way. Earlier this year, it was after the TEDx talk was released. I hit a wall with social media, anything digital, actually. I went on a 2-week monk mode where I didn't have
No social.
nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And you know what? What was interesting, the first couple days I was extremely tired. And that showed me how wired we are to our
Yeah.
devices and how much like adrenaline and endorphins we get from them. So if you cut off them even for a day or two, I'd be curious. Maybe this is a good experiment, for anybody listening to this right now to, if you can honestly say, hey, this is a little bit of a problem for me. Don't worry. Welcome to the club. No judgments here. But take, a day or two just to kind of ease back on your devices. Don't look at your phones.
Yeah.
Don't go on social. And you know what? The world won't end, I promise. And see how you feel after a couple of days. I'd be really curious to get some listeners and viewers feedback on that because, yeah, for the first couple of days, I was super tired and I realized how addicted I was. It was almost like withdrawal symptoms, Patrick.
No, it is. Tara, it is withdrawal symptoms. If you look at the basic neurological components of addiction, we are addicted to our devices. There is no other way to put it. It's like that you were tired because basically it's like your whole system kind of like disconnects from all this intense activity and your whole system starts to like decompress. People who go on holiday, who haven't been on holiday forever, have the same thing. Like, and that's just why generally doctors will tell you when you go on holiday, you should take 2 weeks, because the first week you're so tired, your whole system is decompressing. Like, I remember when I was working in the Valley and I would go on holiday, man, the first week I was on holiday, I was sleeping. That's how tired I was. I was sleeping for the first 2 or 3 days. I would wake up like at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And I think what you experience with your phone, with social media, is the same. It's we are so plugged in 24/7. And the worst is that we're conditioning our kids to be the same. I mean, I look at my son, I look at my daughter, who lives in Chile with her mom, and these kids are always on their devices. From the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep, they're on devices. It's constant stimulation, right? And so I think in the Valley, and more in other startup hubs around the world, one of the things that you're starting to see is coaches and others like me lead kind of like, digital detox retreats, right? Where you go away for 2 or 3 days to some remote part of the jungle somewhere or something where there is no cell phone access. And you don't even bring a device. Like, you're off devices for like 3 or 4 days. And the result is quite powerful. People see things, they think about things, they're able to disconnect, they're able to really rest and recharge. We live in a society where there's just no time to recharge. There's no time for rest, right? It's like people are working 24/7. When I moved, from Chile back to the US, there's a lot of things I love about the US. I always say that I'm one of the biggest fans of America without being American. Especially from the, this optimism and entrepreneurship and business. But the terrible thing about being back in the US is that you feel like you're never resting. You feel like people are working 24/7 all the time. It's like, and you really have to make an effort to kind of like disconnect yourself and give your brain a chance to rest, because if you don't, like, I know so many entrepreneurs that I work with, and you wake up tired Monday morning. You cannot afford to wake up tired Monday morning if you're a founder. I mean, because it will impact everybody else on your team. It will impact your relationship with customers. There's a wonderful book called Why We Sleep by a professor at Berkeley. I think it was Matthew Stevens or Stephen Matthew. I'm getting his name mixed up now. But when I read that book, I was like, it changed completely my sleep habits. I was like, I got to sleep 7 hours a day. I'm not like burning the midnight oil anymore. I'm going to avoid working weekends. I'm going to make sure that I get good sleep. And sometimes what I'll even do is, I will even take like a 20-minute nap in the afternoon. Because when my brain's telling me like, you're not functioning, you're not focused, you're not absorbing the material, you're not creating good material. Sometimes that's what we need, right? But we live in a society which is telling us the opposite all the time.
All the time. All the time. So if I'm hearing you right, you've got a retreat coming up.
Yeah, I'm flying to Santiago, Chile on Saturday, and on Wednesday, I'm doing an all-day retreat for a CEO and his management team. on the outskirts of Santiago in this like beautiful, kind of like rustic kind of hotel out in the middle of the woods. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to all the exercises I'm gonna run with these folks and take them out of their comfort zones and challenge them on some things. So yeah, looking
That
forward to
is
it.
that's a goal of mine. I want to do a confidence retreat. I think that would be just so much fun. Confidence, personal development. Um, yeah, maybe confidence in the Caribbean. Would you want to go?
It sounds really good, actually.
Or confidence in Cabo, which is, I don't know. I haven't decided
Yeah,
yet.
that's good. They both have nice marketing rings to them. So I think either way, you probably couldn't go wrong. But yeah, it's I think doing any kind of retreat like that. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a venture capitalist yesterday, and he's like, yeah, we're going to go to this. We're going to go to a VC summit in Guatemala, and I was like, okay, why not? It's kind of a good way to get out of Miami for a while and do something different. I don't know if I call it a retreat, but yeah, I think doing more of those kind of things, and it doesn't have to be something like super expensive. People think about these retreats, they're like, oh, I got to get on a plane and I got to go somewhere exotic. No, you don't. As long as you can go somewhere in nature and disconnect a little bit. I think I'm always amazed by how at peace and how disconnected I feel whenever I'm in nature.
Yes. Yes.
It has that effect on you.
Yeah.
You're able to breathe,
Grounding.
and yeah, it really is grounding. It really is
Mhm.
grounding. I always encourage people to do more of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Again, especially in this world where we live in now, where we're constantly connected, constantly on social media, getting out in nature, turning it off are some of the best things we can all do. And if you
yeah,
start to look at social media and again, you start to feel that comparison, stop. That is a hard stop. Turn it off, go about the rest of your day, and don't look at it for a while, right? Because all of
yeah.
these things just diminish our self worth, impede our growth, and it's not worth it. So I love our conversation, Patrick. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, we could do this for hours.
I know. I don't think anybody wants to listen to a 24-hour long podcast, though. But
No, that would probably be a lot. I mean, we would probably veer off the deep end at some point, but
yeah, great.
yeah, I think the confidence topic that you talk about, that stuff is so important. I have another tool that I think I talked about in the book, which I recommend to a lot of my clients. I call it the trophy case. And the trophy case is just basically you create a document in Google Docs or Word or whatever, and then you spend 20 or 30 minutes just listing all of your accomplishments, going back as far as you can think, any accomplishment that you have. And then you can layer in, your LinkedIn, your social media recommendations as well. And then you can, progressively add when you get a nice email or a nice text from somebody, you can copy paste and add that. And then, whenever you're having issues or you're struggling or you're starting to, that imposter syndrome is rearing its ugly head, you can just open your trophy case and you can read through that, for a couple of minutes. And I think if you make a habit of doing that often enough, and develop that routine, that does a lot for your confidence as well.
I love that.
Which helps in this social media age that we live in, for sure.
Yes, that is so good. Wonderful. Well, Patrick, thank you again for being a guest on our
Great being
podcast.
here.
Where can everybody get a hold of you? What's the best place?
Best place to get a hold of me is, I'm very active on LinkedIn, Patrick Mork Official. I also have an Instagram called Patrick Mork Official as well, although a lot of content on that is in Spanish. I'm slowly starting to build content in English since I was in, Latin American countries for 5 years. But LinkedIn and Instagram are two of the best places. And then, of course, the other best place, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, just go to patrickmork.com, all one word. And you can subscribe to my newsletter scrolling the bottom of the page and get all these goodies every week in your inbox.
Awesome.
A healthier, more optimistic, more confident leader. So, yeah.
I love that. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And
Thank you so
you
much for
for
having me.
everyone who tuned in. Don't forget to subscribe, like this channel, share it, share the favorite episodes on your social media networks to inspire other people and leave a review. This show can only grow through reviews and through shares. So keep sharing, keep reviewing, and dropping those love notes. We love hearing from our guests. And that's a wrap for this episode of Grasp Confidence. Thank you for joining me today and investing in yourself. Remember, building confidence is an ongoing journey, and each step you take brings you closer to the empowered, fearless version of yourself that you were born to be. Don't forget to visit my website, follow me on social media, and purchase my book, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Stay confident.